In the terror of World War II, as millions of voices were systematically extinguished in the death camps of the Third Reich, a 13-year-old girl achieved the impossible. With a simple red and white checkered diary, she recorded in painfully human words the barbarity the SS tried to erase from history. This is the story of that diary, a testimony they could not destroy. The year is 1933. In Germany, Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party have seized power, casting a dark shadow over Europe. Their ideology, built on racial hatred, immediately targets the Jewish population. Anti-Semitic laws strip away rights one by one. Jews are banned from public spaces, their businesses are boycotted, and their children are expelled from schools. For the Frank family, Otto, Edith, and their daughters, Margot and Annelife, in Frankfurt becomes unbearable. Seeking refuge, they flee to Amsterdam in the Netherlands, hoping for safety and a return to normalcy. For a few years, it seems they have found it. Otto rebuilds his business, and the girls make new friends. Attending school and living the life of typical Dutch children, but the illusion of safety is shattered in May 1940. The German war machine invades the Netherlands, and the nightmare begins anew. The oppressive Nazi regime extends its brutal grip. Jews are forced to wear the Yellow Star of David, curfews are imposed, and their freedoms are once again systematically dismantled. The threat of deportation to unknown labor camps in the East looms over every family. For her 13th birthday, in June 1942, Anne Frank receives a gift that will become her most trusted confidant: a diary. She affectionately names it Kitty and begins to pour her innermost thoughts, fears, and dreams onto its pages. Just a few weeks later, the dreaded call-up notice arrives for her older sister, Margot. The Frank family knows what this means: forced labor and almost certain death. Otto Frank had been preparing for this moment. His plan was to go into hiding in a secret space, concealed behind a bookcase in his own office building at 263 Prinsengracht. They called it the Secret Annex. On July 6, 1942, the Frank family vanished from public life, stepping into a world of shadows and silence. They were soon joined by the Van Pels family, Herman, August, and their son Peter, and later by Fritz Pfeffer, a dentist. 8 people, confined to a few small, cramped rooms. Their survival depended entirely on a small group of Otto Frank's trusted employees: Miep GIs, Kleiman, Victor Kugler, and Bep Voskuhl. Courageous helpers risked their own lives daily, smuggling food, supplies, and news from the outside world into the annex. Life inside was a constant state of tension. During the day, they had to remain perfectly still and silent, whispering so the warehouse workers below wouldn't hear them. At night, they could move more freely, but lived in perpetual fear of discovery. The sound of a car braking, footsteps on the stairs, or an unexpected knock could signal the end. It was in this suffocating atmosphere of fear and confinement that Anne Frank's diary became her lifeline. Kitty was her sanctuary, the one place she could be truly herself. She documented the daily routines, the petty squabbles, the moments of despair, and the flickers of hope. She wrote about her strained relationship with her mother, her budding affection for Peter Van Pels, and her profound longing for freedom. Anne's writing was more than just a personal journal. It was a powerful act of resistance. With astonishing maturity, she reflected on human nature, war, and her own identity. She dreamed of becoming a writer or a journalist after the war, hoping her diary could one day be published as a novel. She wrote, "I can shake off everything as I write. My sorrows disappear. My courage is reborn." But, and that's the great question, will I ever be able to write something great? Will I ever become a journalist or a writer? Her words captured the universal teenage experience, the desire for independence, the search for love, the struggle to be understood, all set against the horrific backdrop of the Holocaust. She gave a human face to an unimaginable tragedy, chronicling not just the persecution but the resilience of the human spirit. For over 2 years, the Secret Annex held its secret. 8 people lived, loved, argued, and hoped within its hidden walls. But their fragile sanctuary was about to be shattered. On the morning of August 4th, 1944, the unthinkable happened. Following a tip from an anonymous informant, whose identity remains a mystery to this day, Dutch police led by an SS officer stormed the building. The The bookcase was torn aside and the hiding place was exposed. 8 residents were arrested, their 2 years of silence violently broken. Miep Gies watched in horror as her friends were led away, helpless to intervene. After the Gestapo left, she and Bep Voskul bravely returned to the ransacked annex. Scattered on the floor amidst the chaos were Anne's diary and loose papers. Miep gathered them, hoping to one day return them to Anne herself. The 8 captives were taken to a Dutch transit camp, Westerbork, before being packed into a cattle car on the last transport to ever leave for Auschwitz. The journey was a descent into hell. Crammed together in darkness with little food or water, they arrived at the infamous Auschwitz-Birkenau extermination camp. Upon arrival, the men and women were separated. It was the last time Anne would ever see her father. The conditions in the camp were beyond human comprehension. Inmates were stripped of their names, their hair, and their dignity, reduced to numbers tattooed on their arms. They endured starvation, brutal forced labor, and constant disease. Anne, her sister Margot, and their mother Edith clung to each other, trying to survive the daily horrors. In late October 1944, as the Soviet army advanced, Anne and Margot were separated from their mother and transported to the Bergen-Belsen concentration camp in Germany. Edith Frank remained in Auschwitz, where she died of starvation and exhaustion just weeks before the camp's liberation. Bergen-Belsen was a scene of chaos and death. Overcrowding, a lack of food, and a raging typhus epidemic claimed thousands of lives. In the brutal winter of early 1945, both Margot and Anne Frank succumbed to the disease, dying just weeks before British forces liberated the camp. Of the 8 people who hid in the secret annex, only one survived: Otto Frank. After Auschwitz was liberated by the Soviets, began the long journey back to Amsterdam, holding on to the desperate hope that his daughters might still be alive. It was only upon his return that he received the devastating news of their deaths. His world was destroyed. But then, Miep Gies gave him the papers she had saved. She handed him Anne's diary, saying, "Here is your daughter Anne's legacy to you." Reading his daughter's words was a revelation for Otto. He discovered a side of Anne he had never known: her deep thoughts, her sharp intellect, and her incredible talent for writing. He realized her voice had to be heard. Fulfilling his daughter's wish, Otto Frank dedicated the rest of his life to publishing her diary. After facing initial rejections, The Diary of a Young Girl was first published in the Netherlands in 1947. Since then, Anne Frank's diary has been translated into over 70 languages and has sold tens of millions of copies worldwide. It stands as one of the most powerful and widely read documents to emerge from the Holocaust. Anne's words transcended her personal tragedy, becoming a universal symbol of hope, tolerance, and the enduring strength of the human spirit in the face of unimaginable evil. Her testimony reminds us why we must never forget. It forces us to confront the consequences of hatred and intolerance, and underscores the vital importance of bearing witness. In a world still wrestling with prejudice and conflict, Anne's voice continues to echo, a timeless call for a better, more compassionate humanity. She wrote, "In spite of everything, I still believe that people are really good at heart." Her diary is the ultimate proof that even in the darkest of times, one small voice can change the world. If this story moved you and you believe in the power of memory, please like this video, share it with others, and subscribe to our channel for more stories that must be told. Thank you for watching.